fiscal cliff that has left the business community in our state and the fiscal community in our state in precarious moods, because they could look at the same charts that we could look at and understand that the state was not in a position and would not be in a position to meet its obligations, going from what they were when I became governor, when we became governor and lieutenant governor, of about $826 million in the contribution. We've increased that contribution by 90%. I know the press release said 44. I did the math. It's 99. It's 90%. And to sustain that with increases and to sustain it over a long period of time, so that we can get to a point where our obligation will be fully funded. This is a momentous occasion, one which we have worked tirelessly to do. I will remind you that the real discussion began when we entered into a study of the pension obligation, which laid bare to everyone again to examine that unfunding, not properly funding the obligation over a long period of time, left us in a situation where we would be looking at $4 to $6 billion per year contribution to make up for the sins of the past. That was unacceptable. I think having that document by an independent agency available for folks to peruse and understand was an important step, and to suggest various ways to get to a different outcome was very important. This agreement will help avoid that fiscal cliff. It will put the state on a more sustainable course that the taxpayers, and quite frankly, very largely the business community demands. It's predictable at this point. Among the other key provisions of this agreement, it adopts a more conservative estimate for future performance of our state investments, thereby minimizing the impact of downturns in the stock market. Let me put this in perspective. During the time that we've been in office together, those of us who have served for the last 6 years, we've actually lowered our expectation with respect to return on investment by 14%. It also maintains 2032 as the payoff date for the $4.3 billion in unfunded liability accrued through December 31st, 1983. So we're not backing off of that. That date, that's the date we closed Tier 1 system. In addition, the deal also extends the amortization period for the balance of the unfunded liability in a new 30-year period by extending the date for a portion of the existing funding shortfall from 2032 to 2046. That responsibility for paying this debt, which was accumulated over decades, is not disproportionately borne by only the taxpayers in the next 14 years. And I'd like to thank Secretary Barnes and his team for their work, and the CBAC leadership for their partnership in arriving at this agreement. We'd also like to thank State Treasurer Napier and State Comptroller Lembo for their input as well. And overall, the deal is a forward-looking agreement. It is a significant milestone that will improve the fiscal health of the state, will allow us to do other things yet needing to be done with respect to our relationships with our state employees as well as our business community. With that, I'll take some questions.
Governor, is this, am I correct? This is like refinancing your house over a longer period of time?
I don't think that that's, I think that that's too, quite frankly, easy way to resolve it. I don't know the last time that the bank allowed you to reset your assumptions with respect to what your interest payment would be, for instance. And it does extend it, but it recognizes that in a very short period of time, we have increased the contribution dramatically, that we will increase that contribution even further, and that we will sustain it over a longer period of time.
The difference for next year's budget deficit is infinitesimal.
This is not about next year's budget, quite frankly. This may put us in a better situation to resolve other issues that will have impact there, and that's why it's significant to get this agreement in place. And we have been working, quite frankly, we've been working steadily since November of 2014 to get to this point, when we kicked off the early work on an independent, full examination of this particular pension plan's obligations, and to the extent to which they were unfunded in prior years, and what we could do about it.
The state taxpayer remains on the hook for several $100 million every year
it's more than $700 million. It's again, it's right now almost it's approaching $1.6 billion. It will rise hundreds of millions of dollars.
Not for 1 year, I'm talking about several hundred million per year, isn't it?
No.
It's billion per year?
Yes.
So,
Let me remind you what $1 billion is.
I know.
It's $1,000 million.
I think we can all
I've
decide.
become the state's. This is scary when I'm the state's math teacher. Yes, this is billions.
so how much money is being moved onto a new amortization schedule?
Well, all of the
And-
obligations. No, I'm
But
sorry.
it will Wall Street, how do you feel Wall Street will treat that?
Wall Street knows that the state would not be in a position to pay $6 billion a year in pension obligations. I've been involved in those discussions, and they have been looking for a way to resolve that issue, just as the business community is saying it has to be resolved if we're going to continue to make investments in the future of Connecticut. This is the date in which those issues were resolved.
Since you're moving this out, when the state of Illinois considered.
I want to.
No, but.
We're not simply moving it out. We are increasing our obligations
No, but.
on top of it. I just.
Go for it.
I've been working really hard at this, so let me have a day, all right? What we're doing is, we have increased, under circumstances that my predecessors would not have increased. There's only one person who got GAP, or two people who got GAP in place the first day I took office. This is a result of GAP as well, as is many of the things that we've done with respect to budgeting here. We're not, I see Pam here, and he'll remind me we're not perfect. We're not perfect. But we're a lot better. We're a lot better than any other administration that any of you has covered on these points. I have played long ball every step of the way. From day one, getting this deal in place has been one of my highest and greatest priorities. Now go ahead. Now we take it apart.
By all means. When other states have done this, it has ended up being more expensive year over year for the existing pension payments. Will it cost taxpayers more money to pay for all these things, and do you know how much?
We don't have a full run of that, Max. But you're asking me to compare. No. Let me just explain, and then.
It is a fair question, though.
It's a fair question in the sense that those are legal words for you to use, but they don't make any sense in this context.
It's one of about a dozen states that has an unfunded liability that's very, very high, that informs everything we do.
And no one in this state believes that we would go from $826 million in contribution in 2010-11 to $6 billion in contribution in 2032. No one in this state believes that. So now you're asking me to consider what it will cost against something that never would be done. Because you know what would happen? This is what would happen in the future. You'd have a different governor many years from now who would do what other governors have done. And that's either to make GAP not applicable, roll it back, undo my executive order, undo the statute, because they'd have no other way to balance the budget. And so getting to the point where building on all of the steps that we've taken, literally Nancy and I and others from day one, to get to this point where we can put this particular pension obligation, and we're not done, but put this particular pension obligation in a box, and to show everyone that the state can meet its obligations on a stated plan, predictably, sustainably. Now, is anything we do perfect? The answer is no. But you're asking me to compare, how much are you going to save against a plan that never would be executed to begin with?